We are going to go through a sample question on file reading and writing in this session. The question says, read a multi-line text file, count the character in each line. So you will be reading the text file line by line, get the character count of each line. Then you will output the count to another file. In the output, each line contains the character count of the corresponding line in the input file. So let's say we have an input file, roses are red, violets are blue. The output file will contain the first line 14 because roses are red. This is 14 characters long. So the first line will have of the output file will have the value 14. The second line, violets are blue, has 17 characters. So the second line of the output file will have 17, the value of 17, so on and so forth. Let's reconsider the programming process. We need to clearly define what the program is to do, which we already get a clear understanding. Now, the second thing is to visualize the programming running on the computer. Here, apparently, we are going to have two file names, the input file and output file, but there will be no output required by this program because the output will be a file that we will not see in the console. Instead, we will use a third-party tool like Notepad to open that file so that we can see what the output looks like. And finally, we will use design tool to create the model and validate the model. And that's what we are going to do now. In order to analyze this question is relatively complex. So far in our course. But when you run into complex questions, always try to do a divide and conquer, which means no matter how complex it is, divide it into smaller pieces, maybe 3 to 5 to 7. Don't exceed 7, and put them into code blocks. Then inside each block, you will divide it further until you reach something that is manageable for you to write the code. So we always start by getting user input. And second is processing logic. And third is generate output. Now here, as we said, there's no output, no visual output, but we can always do some system.out.println execution finished. Just to mark the end of the execution. Now get input. We want to get 2 inputs. And here is how you can divide the work further. You want to get 2 inputs. Get input file name and get output file name. But in order to get input and output file, you need to create a scanner object for keyboard input, right? And further down, once you get the input file, you of course want to open the file. And once you get output file name, you want to open the output file. And you can see that originally it was just one line saying get user input. But as you divide it further, now we have a much manageable code flow that you can follow. Like for this, create the scanner object and get input and file name. We already know how to do it. And open input file, it will be just 1 or 2 lines of code. Open output will be just 1 line, and open input, of course, will be two lines, getting file and getting scanner. Now, in addition to these file creations, we probably want to add blank space in between to signify that this is one block, this is another block. Inside processing logic, we will go over input file line by line. which will be a while statement, as we already seen before. Inside the while, it will be has next line, right? This is the condition. There will be output file name, input file name, I'm sorry. And as we have input file name, I'll move this inside. For each line, get character count, and then output the character count to output file. So these are much more manageable now, right? Let's start creating the file. So let's create a new class. Let's call it sample question file read write. And as always, public static void main string array args with curly braces defined. And again, java.comment, where I'm going to copy the question definition and put some indentations here so it looks better. And the more Java doc comment for main, the reason we want to put the Java doc in front of a method will be more apparent after we learn method itself. And let's copy this pseudocode here. Apparently, some of part we already written, like the last part. But we need to create a scanner object first. So we will copy this code somewhere else. Once you have the scanner, you want to read the input file name. Oops, sorry, not here, but here. Read the input file name. And it will be input file name. That's how we named it. Similarly, we will also get output file name. So now we have the input getting the file name. We are ready to do a processing, and it actually should be input file, not input file name. We will handle this, we will create this input file later, but then we will output the file, we will perform this logic and output and the print line. And now you can see as we open, we also need to close input file. And then close output file. And let's add a blank space in between the code block. So as you can see, this is a code block that is universal for every file processing. You want to read, you want to write. You also always need to input and output. And the processing logic here can change, but the basic process flow will not. So I will suggest you creating some template on your own and keep it for future use that you can reuse the code again and again. You do not need to write all these once more. But of course, before that, we need to add open and close. Close will just be input file.close and the output file.close. For open, opening input file. And the opening output file will be here, print writer. It will be output file. And I think there's an error. What is the error? Oh, it's probably not has next line. It's has next. All right. So like I said, this now is a skeleton that you can reuse, but there's an error message. What is the error message? It says file name cannot invariable. Okay, so it's output file name. But now we have two more errors because we remove all the syntax error and there are two more errors coming. One error says unhandled exception, file not found, and unhandled exception, file not found. That's because these two methods will throw file not found exception. And in order to handle this, we need to, actually we don't intend to handle. We are just going to pass this exception to Java virtual machine. And we still have an error. Why? Because file not handle exception, we haven't defined it. It cannot be resolved type. In order to do it, we need to import file exception handler. We need to import its definition from Java IO. And if you remember, we should have also another one called IO exception. So this main will throw two exceptions, file not found exception and the IO exception. And now we have the basic skeleton that we can use to create a program.